It's the 21st of July 2025. This is a brand new edition of Newsfirst's Primetime News, coming to you live and direct from our Newsfirst studios here in Colombo. Bringing you the news tonight for the Newsfirst team. I am Jayamal Ratnayaka.
And I am Hashni Patiralo. Let's start off with a look at your headlines for tonight.
President meets IMF representatives. Affirms budget relief amid economic strain. Sri Lanka eyes US crude oil to tackle trade gap. Scholarship exam will not be suspended. History and aesthetics will be included in the curriculum. Prime Minister elaborates on education reforms. Catholic Church commends progress on Easter attacks investigation. Final rites of the late Anunayaka of the Askiriya chapter to be held with state honours on Thursday the 24th. Bangladesh Air Force plane crashes into college campus, killing at least 19. In our top story for tonight, during a discussion held with IMF representatives, President Anurukumara Dissanayake emphasized the need to provide the general public with necessary relief through the 2026 budget, despite the challenges ahead. A discussion between President Anurukumara Dissanayake and representatives of the International Monetary Fund were held this morning at the Presidential Secretariat regarding the future review of the extended fund facility between the IMF and Sri Lanka.
The IMF delegation was headed by the Mission Chief for Sri Lanka, Evan Papageorgiou. President Dissanayake noted that Sri Lanka has achieved a level of economic stability under the present administration and emphasized that building on this foundation, the government is prepared to accelerate efforts to integrate Sri Lanka into the global economy through sustainable growth and the pursuit of emerging economic opportunities. According to the President's media division, the discussion further focused on facilitating investment through policy reforms and tariff concessions aimed at fostering an investor-friendly environment. The President expressed confidence that Sri Lanka would continue to benefit from the IMF's support in ensuring long-term economic stability and consistency in policy direction. President Dissanayake expressed his gratitude for the support extended to Sri Lanka by the IMF so far and emphasized that he is committed to ensuring that all the benefits of the country's economic growth are delivered to the people. The representatives of the International Monetary Fund, commending the commitment of the government under the leadership of the President to advancing Sri Lanka's economic progress, also agreed to extend the necessary support to maintain economic stability and further Sri Lanka's global advancement. Sri Lanka is focusing on strategies to further reduce the trade deficit with the United States, including measures to enable the purchase of crude oil from the US. Now, this step comes amidst ongoing discussions with the US regarding a further reduction in reciprocal tariffs.
ඇත්තටම අපි පිරිපහදුවේ බොරතෙල් වල අපිට තව competition එක වැඩි කරගැනීමේ
Actually, we need to increase competition for crude oil in our refinery. Also, in the past few days with the war, we discussed various types of crude oil that we could obtain from outside the Middle East. We looked into getting oil from the African region and other regions. However, our current refinery does not have the facilities to refine all types of crude oil. Therefore, we plan to open our tender procedure to crude oil that can be refined after sample testing. Accordingly, we have already taken steps to obtain samples for WTI crude oil from America. If those samples are tested and found suitable, our method is to allow them to participate in the tender. Under that tender procedure, as Sri Lanka and specifically as the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, we expect to obtain crude oil with the most competition at the lowest price. We believe this will help reduce our trade deficit and create a very advantageous situation for Sri Lanka.
Meanwhile, Deputy Minister of Economic Development Anil Jayantha Fernando said that discussions to further reduce the 30% tariff imposed by America are progressing positively. He mentioned that another Zoom discussion related to this is scheduled for the day after tomorrow, the 23rd of July. The Deputy Minister also said that discussions are planned regarding reaching a bilateral agreement based on the final agreements of both parties. Previously, US President Donald Trump took steps to reduce the reciprocal tariffs declared at 44% for goods sent from Sri Lanka to 30%. The amended tariff rate announced through a letter was addressed to President Anurukumara Dissanayake. So far, President Trump has set a deadline for 1st of August for those tariff rates to come into effect.
US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said that August 1st is the deadline for countries to begin paying tariffs to the United States, adding that the next 2 weeks are going to be quote-unquote for the record books with tariff deals. However, he said that nothing stops countries from talking to the US after the 1st of August.
Oh, they're going to love the deals that President Trump and I are doing. I mean, they're just going to love them. You know, the president figured out the right answer and sent letters to these countries, said this is going to fix the trade deficit. This will go a long way to fixing the trade deficit. And that's gotten these countries to the table. And they're going to open their markets or they're going to pay the tariff. And if they open their markets, the opportunity for Americans to export, to grow their business, farmers, ranchers, fishermen, this is going to be, the next 2 weeks are going to be weeks for the record books. President Trump is going to deliver for the American people.
Is that August 1st deadline with the EU a hard deadline? Are you going to get a deal since you were just on the phone?
No, that's a hard deadline. So on August 1st, the new tariff rates will come in. But nothing stops countries from talking to us after August 1st, but they're going to start paying the tariffs on August 1st. Now remember, the world is paying 10% right now, and China's paying 30%. So that's right now, and that's why we're running at about plus $30 billion a month for the American people. You got to remember, this is going to pay off our deficit. This is going to make America stronger. We are finally protecting America.
Well, you'll have that income if you keep them in place, but if you're negotiating them away, then they won't be there. So that is contradictory to me. But
nothing's getting no.
So you're not
getting
negotiating
negotiated away. We have a 10% of the world. No, 10% is definitely going to stay. Many countries will pay higher, like Vietnam and Indonesia, right? They're 19 and 20%. Most countries will pay higher. The small countries are likely to be 10%, but the bigger countries are likely to pay higher. That's just the way it's going to be because we can't have these $1 trillion trade deficit. It's just wrong for America, and Donald Trump is going to fix it.
The Singapore dollar is under renewed pressure as US trade challenges are primed to worsen and as speculation of exchange rate policy easing rises. The Sing dollar, which is already weakening as the US dollar recovers, faces fresh tariff threats after US President Donald Trump recently warned he may impose levies on pharmaceuticals and semiconductors, two of Singapore's key exports. Economists at firms such as Barclays and Asia Decoded expect the Monetary Authority of Singapore to move to a more accommodative policy setting in July to support the economy. The Sing dollar was at 1.2846 to the US dollar at 8:10 a.m. local time on the 21st of July. In the year to date, the Singapore currency has risen 5.9% against the greenback. In the United States, investors, however, seem mostly unbothered thus far over the deadline on tariffs. For last week, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average dipped marginally, the S&P 500 and Nasdaq Composite rose 0.6% and 1.5% respectively. Even a report that Trump wanted a minimum of 15% to 20% tariffs on the European Union only dealt a minimal blow to markets, which mostly closed unchanged Friday. Although those figures are higher than the universal 10% baseline tariff Trump reportedly wanted, and which the EU is hoping to secure, they are still lower than the 30% Trump said he will impose on the bloc in his July 12th letter. An upbeat start to earnings season has also helped to quell tariff fears for now. Around 83% of the S&P 500 companies that have reported earnings have exceeded expectations, according to FactSet data. In particular, big banks such as JP Morgan Chase and Goldman Sachs, which serve as barometers for economic activity, had solid beats, boosting investor sentiment.
The Sri Lanka Board of Investment stated that the inflow of foreign direct investments for the first 6 months of 2025 of the country has progressed by 101% compared to the first 6 months of the previous year. A notice issued by the BOI stated the progress attributes to the government's continuous economic policies and reforms aimed at improving investor confidence and creating a business-friendly environment. The FDI inflow to the country during the first 6 months of this year amounts to $507 million. In the same period last year, it was recorded at $252 million. Further, the notice highlighted that the process of approving new proposals is taking place under an accelerated mechanism for providing investment facilitation, and several investment projects that have a high contribution to the country's economy have reached the implementation stage this year. The BOI has approved 57 projects during the first 6 months of this year.
What changes can be expected through newly proposed education reforms? Will history be removed from the curriculum? Will the scholarship exam be stopped? Minister of Education, Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya clarified all this and more on Newsline.
දැන් තියෙන ප්‍රධානම චෝදනාව මේ අධ්‍යාපන ප්‍රතිසංස්කරණවල ඉතිහාසයේ විෂය අනිවාර්ය කරලා නැහැ කියලා. ඇත්තද මේක?
සම්පූර්ණ බොරුවක්.
මොකද්ද කරලා තියෙන්නේ?
6 වසරවල් වලට අනිවාර්යයි. 10 11 දී එතන 11 වසරේදීනේ O level කරන්න තියෙන්නේ. එතකොට 11 O level කරනකොට ළමයෙක්ට තෝරගන්න පුළුවන් ඉතිහාසයේ O level ජාතික මට්ටමේ විභාගයට ඒ වෙනුවෙන් කරනවද නැද්ද කියලා.
ඒ කියන්නේ බකට් සබ්ජෙක්ට් එකක් විදියට.
ඔව් අපි හිතමු දැන්
බාස්කට් සබ්ජෙක්ට් එක.
අපි හිතමු ඔයා තෝරගන්නේ O level වලට මම ඒක එක්සෑම් එක කරන්නේ. ඒ වුණාට අපි හඳුන්වා දෙනවා එකක් further learning modules කියලා. වැඩිදුර ඉගෙනීම සඳහා module. ඔබ ඒක අර බාස්කට් ඔබේ වචන වලින් බාස්කට් සබ්ජෙක්ට් එකකට හරියට තෝරගත්තේ නැත්නම් අර අතනින් තෝර ගැනීම අනිවාර්යයි. ඔබ බාස්කට් සබ්ජෙක්ට් එකක් හැටියට තෝරගත්තොත් එතකොට ආයෙත් තෝරගන්න ඕනේ. නමුත් කෙසේ වුණත් 10 11 දී ඉතිහාසය සෞන්දර්ය ඉගෙන ගන්න ඕනේ.
ඔබතුමිය පිළිගන්නවා. ආණ්ඩුවක් විදියට පිළිගන්නවා. අනිවාර්යෙන් ඉතිහාසය අධ්‍යයනය කළ යුතුයි කියලා.
ඔව් මොකෝ මං කියන්නේ ඒක විශේෂයෙන් මට ඒක බැහැර කරන්න පුළුවන් කෙනෙක් නෙවෙයි. මොකද මම ඉතිහාසය මම කියන්නේ මම සමාජ විද්‍යාඥයෙක්. හරි.
ඔබ අනිවාර්යෙන් ඉතිහාසය අධ්‍යයනය කළ යුතුයි.
එතකොට මම ඒකේ වටිනාකම හොඳින් දන්න කෙනෙක්. ඒතකොට මම කොහොමද ඒක කප්පාදු කරන ප්‍රතිපත්තියකට එකඟ වෙන්නේ?
ශිෂ්‍යත්වයට මොකද වෙන්නේ මේ ප්‍රතිසංස්කරණ තුලින්?
එකක් අපි හදනවා දැන් ඔබ දන්නවා මේ වෙනකොට යම් සංවාදයක් යනවා ශිෂ්‍යත්වය ගැන ශිෂ්‍යත්වයේ පීඩාකාරී වැඩි කියලා. ඒක ළමයන්ට විශාල මානසික වදයක් වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඒක අවම කරන්න අපි විභාග දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවත් එක්ක කතා කරලා තියෙනවා. ඒ විභාගය පොඩ්ඩක් වෙනස් කරන්න පීඩාව අඩු කරන්න කියලා. ඒතකොට අලුත් ශිෂ්‍යත්වය විභාගය අපි 2028 හඳුන්වන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
ආචාර්ය අමරසූරිය සහතික වෙනවා අගමැතිවරිය ලෙස පහේ ශිෂ්‍යත්වය හොස් කරන්නේ නැහැ කියලා.
නෑ.
The complete Newsline episode with Education Minister, Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya can be viewed on all Newsfirst social media channels. Moving on to more news, the Catholic Church urges the implementation of the Presidential Commission's recommendations on the removal of former Director of the State Intelligence Service and Senior DIG Nilanta Jayawardena from the Police Service, as also recommended by the Police Commission. Reverend Father Cyril Gamini Fernando, media spokesperson of the Archdiocese of Colombo, commented on this matter at a media briefing held this morning.
දැන් අපේ කතෝලික සභාවේ ස්ථාවරය වෙන්නේ
Our Catholic Church's position is that the Presidential Commission of Inquiry has also made recommendations against Nilanta Jayawardena. They have recommended that a criminal case be filed against him under the Penal Code. The recommendation has been made to the Attorney General. From the beginning, we have insisted that not only his recommendation but all recommendations made by the Presidential Commission of Inquiry should be fully implemented. We are pleased that disciplinary action has been taken and the decisions are made accordingly. However, all recommendations from the Commission of Inquiry must also be enforced. The reason for this is that the Easter Sunday attack was a massacre. Nilanta Jayawardena had received very specific information about who was planning the attack and where it would take place. On the day of the attack, he had received reliable information hours in advance, including detailed information just half an hour before the attack occurred. Despite this, at the Security Committee meeting held after receiving the information, he has not presented any facts based on it. The Presidential Commission of Inquiry states that general information must be processed into intelligence information, but he has not followed this procedure. Furthermore, all the data on his laptop has been deleted, as has the data on his mobile phone, which raises suspicion. The Commission of Inquiry says that if he had used this information properly, the attack could have been prevented.
තොරතුරු හරියට ඔහු පාවිච්චි කරා නම් මේ ප්‍රහාරය වළක්වා ගන්න තිබුණා කියන එක තමයි විමර්ශන කොමිෂන් සභාවත් කියන්නේ.
Reverend Father Cyril Gamini Fernando also expressed his views on the investigations into the Easter attacks.
ප්‍රකාශ කරන්න ඕනේ මේ දැනට කෙරෙන විමර්ශන.
It should be noted that the current investigations are being carried out in an organized way. This is a complex case that requires a deep and thorough examination of many aspects, not just a superficial look. The incident happened 6 years ago, and there are suspected networks of connections involved. Therefore, the investigation must cover all these areas carefully and systematically. We understand that the CID needs to conduct these investigations properly, and the government also has a responsibility. However, the process may seem slow to some, as everyone wants the truth to come out quickly. While we all want a swift conclusion, given the complexity, it's more important to carry out the investigations thoroughly, transparently and honestly, rather than rushing through them. So far, some results have been achieved, and we believe the investigation will be completed soon.
මම හිතනවා ඒක සිදුවෙමින් පවතිනවා කියලා යම් යම් ප්‍රතිඵල ලැබිලා තියෙනවා. ඉදිරියේදී අපි විශ්වාස කරනවා මේක ඉක්මනින් ඉවර කර ගන්නට පුළුවන් වෙයි කියලා.
Meanwhile, at another press conference held today at the Centre for Society and Religion, views were expressed regarding the investigation into the Easter attacks.
The removal of this police officer from service, whose name is mentioned in the reports as being accused, is a victory for the people of this country. But that is not the problem. The intelligence officer who was dismissed from service, Suresh Saleh, is now working at Pathfinder for a much higher salary.
We see that there is still fear to touch certain individuals in some places. We understand that a lot of pressure is coming. This can be local or foreign. We are watching this. Therefore, we would like to request that you do not succumb to pressure. Shani and Ravi are being attacked from all sides. What is essential is to take responsibility yourselves. Don't try to escape by putting it on someone else's shoulders. This is your biggest opportunity to deliver justice for these victims and to show society that you are people who do what you say. The journey to find justice for this catastrophe. Accelerate this journey, make it swifter, expedite it, because the more this is delayed, the more the pressure against it can increase.
What are these investigations for? These investigations are to find out who exploded the bomb. How did the bomb explode? That part is confirmed to us. What are we asking to find out? What is His Eminence the Cardinal asking to find out? Not the ones who did it, but the ones who made it happen. Find the ones who orchestrated the conspiracy. The importance lies in bringing out the masterminds who conspired it. Currently, 12 cases are ongoing in the Kegal High Court. 1 or 2 in the Putlam High Court, 4 in Batiklo. A trial at bar is ongoing in Putlam. There's a trial at bar in Colombo. There's a case in the High Court in Kalmune. There's another case in the High Court in Colombo. There are 2 other trials at bar in Colombo. In this way, 12 cases are being conducted. Let the investigations continue. However, investigations are not necessary to implement the recommendations. Therefore, we urge this government to implement those recommendations immediately and expeditiously.
Now at 75 months, where are we? The Easter attack probe was dead. The investigations into the Easter attack were killed. It wasn't breathing. Its pulse wasn't there. It was such an investigation that is now moving forward by arresting individuals one by one, sending people like Nilantha home and implementing these recommendations. Yes, it's delayed. It's slow. There are several problems with this. Do you think that thousands of people in the police department were involved in this investigation, that everyone could be put on it? No. The vast majority of them are still feeding off the scraps at the Rajapaksa Wickramasinghe mansions. That's why the investigations are being conducted by fewer officers than the fingers on one hand. Even though we are in a hurry, we cannot allow any criminal to escape by rushing this.
The Colombo High Court today served indictments against former ministers Mahindananda Alutgamage and Nalin Fernando, along with retired Major General Nanda Mallavarachi, the former Secretary to the Ministry of Sports, over allegations of misusing public funds under the Public Property Act. The charges relate to a controversial procurement during the 2014 presidential election period, where 14,000 carom boards and 14,000 checkers boards were imported through the state-run Sirasa and distributed to sports clubs allegedly for political gain.
Following the serving of indictments, Colombo High Court Judge Manjula Tilakaratne ordered the release of all three accused on bail. Each was granted a cash bail of 100,000 rupees and two surety bails of 2.5 million rupees. The Attorney General has filed this case alleging that between the 1st of September and 31st December 2014, over 3.9 million rupees in public funds were misused in the procurement of 14,000 carom boards and 14,000 checkers boards for sports clubs. The charges claim violations under the Public Property Act during the purchase process. The case follows a May 29th ruling by the Colombo Permanent High Court Trial at Bar, which sentenced former Sports Minister Alut Gamage to 20 years and former Trade Minister Fernando to 25 years of rigorous imprisonment over a separate fraud involving over 53 million rupees related to the same procurement. The verdict was delivered at the conclusion of a case filed by the Bribery Commission under charges of corruption. The case filed under the Public Property Act has been scheduled to be taken up on the 4th of September. Meanwhile, retired Major General Nanda Mallavarachi, former Secretary to the Ministry of Sports, has filed a writ petition in the Court of Appeal seeking to invalidate the indictments filed against him in the Colombo High Court. When the petition was taken up before the Court of Appeal bench comprising President of the Court of Appeal Justice Rohanta Besurya and Justice Priyantha Fernando, the case was scheduled to be called on the 28th of July for further consideration of facts. In his petition, the retired Major General stated that he was listed as a witness in the case previously filed by the Commission to investigate allegations of bribery or corruption before the Colombo Permanent High Court Trial at Bar. The petitioner argues that the decision to name him as a defendant in the case filed by the Attorney General related to the same incident is against the law.
Former Minister Duminda Dissanayake, who was remanded in connection with the gold-plated T-56 firearm incident, returned to Anuradhapura yesterday after being granted bail. He was in Anuradhapura to attend a program held at the Sri Lanka Freedom Party office in the Anuradhapura district. This is how he was welcomed by the supporters.
Newsfirst with the people.
The Anunayaka of the Askari chapter of the Siam sect, Most Venerable Anamadwe Sri Dhammadasi Anunayaka Thera, passed away this morning, concluding his exemplary life journey of 67 years. The cremation of the mortal remains of the late Anunayaka Thera will be held on the 24th of this month at the Askiriya Police Grounds in Kandy with state sponsorship.
The Most Venerable Thera, who held the position of Chief Incumbent of the Atkandaraja Mahaviharya in Kurunegala, also served as a senior lecturer at the Sri Lanka Bhikshu University in Anuradhapura. Born on the 3rd of September 1958, as the fifth of 7 siblings, the Most Venerable Anamaduwe Sri Dhammadasi Anunayaka Thera received his early education at Anamaduwa Mahavidyalaya and Maledeva College in Kurunegala. The Most Venerable Thera was ordained on the 19th of May 1976. Most Venerable Anamaduwe Sri Dhammadasi Thera followed primary monastic education at the Sri Jnaneswara Pirivena at the Hunupitiya Gangaramya Temple and received higher ordination in 1979 at the chapter house of the Askiri Mahaviharya. Most Venerable Dhammadasi Thera entered the University of Peradeniya in 1982 and obtained a special degree in Pali in 1985. A holder of master's degree, the Anunayaka Thera rendered a remarkable service to the advancement of the Buddha Sasana while holding numerous important positions throughout his life. He was appointed Anunayaka of the Askiriya chapter of the Siam sect on the 5th of May 2016.
සංස්කෘතියට පිරිහෙන කටයුත්තක් නම් එබඳු දේවල් කොච්චර ධන සම්පත් ලැබුණත් ඒවාට ඉඩ දෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒක මේ මෑත කාලේ සමහර කටයුතු වලින් නැවත වතාවක් අපට ඔප්පු කරලා පෙන්නුවා.
Charitabe Singha, the Colombo district organizer of the Sambagi Janabalavega, said at a media briefing today that the party has no reason to change the opposition leader.
Clearly, no member of the Samagi Jana Balavegya, no organizer or anyone involved in this sees any need to change the opposition leader. If someone questions the role of the opposition leader, there are two ways he can carry out his duties: by raising his voice for the people inside Parliament and by doing the same outside Parliament.
Charitabe Singha made this statement in response to a question from journalists about the position of deputy leader of the party.
Why is Dayasri included in this? If I am offered the position of deputy leader, I too would accept it. Anyone would. It is a role anyone would be willing to take on. Dayasri is also a capable person. He is not a bad choice.
This interaction took place last afternoon at the Ahaleppula Wax Museum in Kandy. Former President Ranil Wickramasinghe and Samagi Janabalavegya's Lakshman Kiriyala, along with his daughter, were seen engaged in a cordial discussion. Meanwhile, party leader Champika Ranawaka also visited the Wax Museum yesterday. Speaking to the media, partly Champika Ranawaka said that a strong opposition would be formed with a skilled group.
Well, that is something the Samagi Jana Balavegya needs to decide, whether to change its leader, to form leadership councils or to hand it over to new individuals. We must definitely say that the Samagi Jana Balavegya has talented people. But then the Samagi Jana Balavegya and the United National Party need to decide if they want to remain in opposition for another 30 years, as they have been since 1994. That decision belongs to those parties. However, we do say one thing: for the future of this country, to move the country forward, to advance the country economically and socially through a successful program instead of this government's plan, to bring forward educated leadership instead of the rural leaders in this government, and to bring forward a skilled group instead of the incapable people in this government, we will build a strong opposition in the future.
A performing arts event titled Kadaravet Perumane Karnai Devan, celebrating the ancient story of Lord Katharagama, was held in Colombo yesterday. The performing arts event Kadaravet Perumane Karnai Devan, presented by the Abhinayak Kshetra School of Dance in celebration of the Katharagama festival, was held yesterday in Colombo. The event was attended by Indian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka, Santosh Jha, CEO of Capital Maharaja Group, Suresh Srinivasan, and Rajkumar Bharti, the great-grandson of the great poet, Subramania Bharatiyar. The dance drama was produced and directed by Divya Sujain, founder of the Abhinayak Kshetra Dance School and a Bharatanatyam artist. It was performed through a collaboration of Sri Lankan and Indian dance and music artists. The music for the production was composed by Rajkumar Bharati, the great-grandson of Mahakavi Bharati. Shakti TV and Shakti FM served as the electronic media partners for this colourful event.
A Bangladesh Air Force training aircraft crashed into a school campus in the capital Dhaka shortly after takeoff earlier today, killing at least 19 people.
At least 19 people have died and more than 100 were injured after Bangladeshi Air Force training jet crashed into a school campus in the capital, Dhaka. Footage of the scene at Milestone School and College in the northern suburb of Uttara shows a huge fire and a thick plume of smoke. The armed forces has confirmed that one of its aircraft was involved and that the pilot was killed in the crash. A doctor at the National Institute of Burn and Plastic Surgery told reporters that more than 50 people, including children and adults, were taken to hospital with burns. The death toll may still rise, with official sources giving different numbers on how many people have died and were injured. A statement from the military said, quote-unquote, Bangladesh Air Force's F-7 BGI training aircraft crashed in Uttara. The aircraft took off at 13:06. The country's fire service said on social media it had 9 units at the scene along with 6 ambulances. Images from the scene show scores of emergency service workers sorting through charred rubble to try and find survivors. Muhammad Yunus, the leader of Bangladesh's interim government, said necessary measures would be taken to investigate the cause of the incident and ensure all kinds of assistance. In a post on X, he said, quote-unquote, this is a moment of deep sorrow for the nation. I wish the injured a speedy recovery and instruct all authorities, including the hospitals concerned, to deal with the situation with utmost importance. Bangladesh has announced a day of mourning on Tuesday when the national flag will be flown at half-mast across the country.
Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba says he will not step down despite a significant setback in the upper house elections that has raised questions within his own party and triggered calls for a no-confidence motion from the opposition. Japan's ruling coalition lost its majority in the House of Councillors in Sunday's election, an outcome that will add pressure on embattled Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, who vowed to stay on despite yet another heavy blow to his party. The cards are stacked against Ishiba, with all major opposition parties ruling out, joining the Liberal Democratic Party and its partner Komeito Party in an expanded coalition. Despite his intention to remain as Prime Minister, calls for Ishiba to resign from within the LDP may grow. The ruling camp failed to meet its pre-election goal of winning at least 50 of the 125 contested seats to reach the majority threshold in the upper house. The LDP and Komeito now have 122 seats, down from 141 before the election. The coalition has now been deprived of majority control in both houses of parliament, the upper house and the House of Representatives, a very rare situation for a government in post-war Japan. Despite its Japanese first mantra and nationalistic policy agenda targeting foreigners, LDP increased its share of upper house seats from 2 to 15, a level that enables it to submit bills in the chamber. Upper house members serve 6-year fixed terms, unlike those in the lower house, which can be dissolved by the Prime Minister. Half of the 248-member upper house goes up for election every 3 years to avoid a complete turnover of seats. Voter turnout stood at 58.51%, higher than the 52.05% recorded in the previous upper house election in 2022.
And that's a wrap of Primetime News for tonight.
Thank you for watching. Good night.